Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today in our next edition of the SAI Nano Chat. And we're super excited today to be joined by JennyMae Kho. And she will be talking today about the Dreamland project. And so for those of you who don't know what Nano Chats are, these are one-to-one conversations with founders, directors of new initiatives, really focusing at the intersection between science and society. And so we recently launched the gallery called the New Society Art Gallery. And so what we are also doing as part of the Nano Chats is interviewing artists and walking through their process and trying to understand what is it they're trying to build, what are they not trying to build, and having a conversation, just a free-flowing conversation. And today we're also joined by Brian, who will also be interviewing and asking questions to JennyMae. And so for those of you who are watching or interested in doing a Nano Chat, do contact us, okay? Join us at stemadvocacy.org and you'll find my email there. I'll be happy to talk to you at that point. So without further ado, I'll let JennyMae start, and this is free flowing, so there'll be interruptions. Okay, JennyMae, to be ready.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you're going through, I'll be like, wait, that doesn't
Jump in, jump in.
normal. Okay, so JennyMae, take it away.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And I thought it was a really opportune moment because you also do your stories in science, and the Dreamland Project happens to be a storytelling kind of project as well. So appreciate this. I think we'll find a lot of synchronicities maybe in some kind of level. So, just first of all, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is JennyMae. I am a writer, musician, multidisciplinary artist. I guess my past life was in science. And I know I hate saying like past life and science, especially when you're an artist, because there's that whole kind of split in between it. Like science has always been with me and art has always been with me. So I really do consider them kind of like hand in hand together things. So even though, right now it's like my identity is like, oh, I'm an artist. It's not as though I'm divorced from like the rigor and the questions and the curiosity of science. That being said, I call myself an artist now, and I am influenced by everything, including the natural world, which would involve science. So, it's my website, JennyMaeKho.com, if you want to check out some of my work. Recently, and first of all, I want to make sure, and anyone who's watching this, I hope everyone is healthy and safe at home. I recently did some projections of the remix of, the Emily Dickinson poem, Hope is a Thing with Feathers, remixed with different readings and visuals to sort of get people's spirits up and kind of give them a sense. Because I think there's a lot of oppressiveness about being where we are right now in our homes, and we have to kind of hang on to that light and hang on to the idea of weightlessness, lightness, and joy in what we do. And I think art is a great vehicle for that. So, moving on to sort of what the Dreamland Project is, I guess I wanted to start it off, answering a question with another question, which I guess is like what you would do in science a lot of the time as well. So like, what is this story? Like Fenwell, Brian, like what would you sort of define as a story, or what qualities would make a story? Or
Yeah, I think for me, a story is like recollection of events. Especially in the realm, if you look up on history, we've always told our history through story, right? So
yes.
it's about recollecting, but at the same time, you're looking forward, right? So it's about stitching these events that have happened in the past and even possibly stitching them into the future, right? So for me, recollection or so. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I'm a very bottom-up processor, so middle end, they build to kind of kind of towards a climax to kind of push forth some sort of moral or lesson or some sort of guidance. But I do like your kind of recollection of history kind of viewpoint as well. I think that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah. History is huge. The idea of history and story are definitely intertwined with each other. My question, like this is great. So that we've sort of talked about what the story does, but we can get a little more granular and be like, like how do you experience the story? Like what vehicles do you get stories from? And I could, like I know I'm kind of leading down the road, but I feel like for me, I'm mostly reading stories or listening to stories or watching stories, so I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts on the way that you experience stories?
I think for me, I think it's all modes. Of course, I'm reading them a lot, right? And experiencing them at times. If you are watching a movie, for example, right? It's a retelling of a story, and your mind makes it real for that moment. There are some movies where literally your heart starts, right? So that you're experiencing the story, you're reliving it almost, right? So many modes, and so I'm always looking actually for other types of modes, right? Where you can stories, and I think about, for example, Star Trek. I'm a Trekkie, and
what is this? What is it?
Star Trek. So
Star Trek, yes.
Holodeck on Star Trek. Maybe Brian knows this stuff, right? You actually walk into. There are no movies in that realm. But you walk into an actual part of the story. You become part of the story as an entity, and that's fascinating. So anyway, many modes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's really great. That's a really great segue into sort of what the Dreamland Project is, because it is a storytelling vehicle. If we had a holodeck, there would definitely be a holodeck involved, but that is for 20 years down the road when we actually can. But as it's been conceived, it's an immersive, interactive, multi-sensory series of art installations that is meant to elevate and expand on the experience of story. So like I love how you were saying, like, story is experienced in all of these different modes, and the reaction that you were getting with the story, and that really is sort of what the crux is for me, I guess, in terms of part of my creative process is that I feel like I'm a very sensory person. So I don't want to isolate something in a visual kind of story or an auditory story. Like I really feel that being present in a story means, kind of embracing all the senses. So in the Dreamland Project, I want to use sights and sounds, smells. I think smells are really key, to sort of elicit all these feelings of a particular idea or an experience. And, because it's the Dreamland and it's not necessarily the real land, I wanted to play with the idea of an exaggerated reality. I wanted to use in some of these pieces, in the way that it's constructed, kind of a dream logic and dream imagery, so it sort of tap into the subconscious, and let you sort of sit in idea. The way you kind of, you wake up in the morning and you're like, that dream was weird, and you sort of dwell on it and think about it, and so I wanted this to not just be about reenacting the story, but really getting to the heart of the story and making it memorable, and making it making you question it and turn it over in your hands and look at it and feel like you were swallowed it and feel like you were being followed around by this idea, so that's basically what the sort of crux of it is.
Before you go ahead, so summarize a little bit, I think, from what I understand, and ask you questions as well. So
yes,
you have you talk about stories, and then you talked about science and art. I'm trying to sort of, what is the so is the problem or the issue that you're trying to tackle that the storytelling is it's like you're trying to add more dimension to storytelling, and that the issue now is that most stories are told in one dimension or two dimensions. You're trying to go in multiple dimensions, right?
Yes.
Second thing is like, so where is science and art, and like where's that all fused in all of this, right? Just help us fuse all these pieces together.
Those are all the hard questions. um, well, I guess, first of all, when it comes to the problem, or I guess the problem isn't necessarily how stories are being told. I think the problem is what stories are being told. And you mentioned like history,
Right.
and right now our history is very much told from this dominant perspective, and I love that. I read this, and it's the dominant perspective is dominant narrative rather is described as the invisible hand, which guides reality and perceived reality. So like that, hold that idea sort of as a metaphor, and you think about like how we're living here in America, because this piece is kind of about the American dream as well. Like we're fed this sort of white Western Eurocentric male history that has excluded the stories of, persons of color, immigrants, indigenous peoples, like queer history, like, and those things are what, I guess I really want to make them shine as big as possible, because there are hundreds and hundreds of years of sort of oppressing that and dumbing it down and making it not seem like a thing. And so first of all, it's these kinds of stories that are not being told, like I want them to kind of come out with a bang and sort of have a lot more impact than if they were being just sort of on paper. Not that paper doesn't, like words and a story and an essay doesn't have power, and they're tremendously powerful things, but in the way that I want to construct this is to sort of have that big, just big impact for those particular stories. And then what was I was going to say something else, and I totally
the science connection part. I guess before you answer that, I think for you, I guess it's really about telling of these stories, the actual just telling of these stories that are typically unheard, right? And adding the multi-dimension, like you can enhance their effect.
Yes. So I guess that comes down to when you're talking about like science and telling stories. I think first of all, it comes from like a place of like joy, and like fascination with something. And so it's not necessarily initially that I'm like, oh, there's just a science behind this thing. It's sort of like, here's an idea, and then you ask like why or how, or maybe you, like, for example, which we'll kind of go into later on, the idea of optical illusion. So optical illusions is something that I'm playing with right now, is something that is probably very, very huge in one of the pieces in Dreamland. And, that was kind of birthed from, first of all, memories of kind of being a child and reading like books about like optical illusions and being completely like fascinated with this sort of trick of the mind and trying to understand that. And then eventually like reading about sensation and perception and, how, for example, in the reverse color illusion that I'll show later on, like, how your photoreceptors get burned out and you see another image in front of you. And so it's those like little pieces that contribute to the whole of it. Another sort of inspiration, I guess, is the olfactory pieces that I would like to produce in the Dreamland project. So I think smell is very much not present thing in art. I mean, a lot of art is like visual and you can see it and even touch it and hear it, but smell is so powerful, you know? I mean, it's like straight to the hippocampus. It brings memory, it brings emotion, you know, and I think that it needs to be utilized more in art. And you know, like understanding these connections, like understanding how you are physically related and how you interact with the world around you is like so important, because it lets you like enhance your ideas. It's not like, oh, that's cool, it reminded me of this. It's like, oh, this is what's actually happening. You know, should we increase the amount of smell? Like, will it, you know, it lets you ask questions and dive deeper into your
In there. It's a lot of things in there, and we're gonna get to them, right? But I want to make sure we keep moving through your presentation so that we have time to chat more. So keep going.
Cool. So, you know, I guess, you know, we can move to the next piece. Well, like, let's just sort of watch the video, you know, for people who are watching this right now. This is a snapshot of the Dreamland project that I kind of put together. You know, bear in mind, this is a multi-year project and this is sort of in its nascent stage, but these are ideas that, of, you know, projects that I've started, projects that I've kind of done, and the direction that this is going to go in. So I guess without further ado, I will play this. And there's sound, so hopefully you'll hear it.
Lost the sound.
Yeah, and the video stopped as well.
Damn it! It was working so well. We'll do this. Let's do it again. Let me try. Are you guys hearing anything?
was cool.
Yay!
Also, the American flag at the end with all its colors.
Yeah, how cool, huh?
Brian, did you see it?
I did. Yeah, I did see it. It's very neat.
I
Very
think I get tired of these things.
That was your next question. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what?
That's cool. That's good. Fantastic. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's a simple. Sometimes I feel a bit like Marcel Duchamp, putting his toilet seat out and calling it art. But for me, it's like an opportunity to use that experience to kind of allow one to explore themselves, and to explore their own perspective, which, we're very much, many people are sort of like ingrained, entrenched in their reality without recognizing the reality of other people, or there's sort of or you're assuming, and there are a lot of these assumptions about, like what, who's believing what, or who's perceiving where, and everything is very much different. So I guess I wanted to like walk through that final piece a bit, just to kind of give a sense of how I envision this whole dreamland piece, and particularly that last piece with the flag, this one that you're sort of seeing here. This is a mock-up of what I plan on doing. This is the American dream is an illusion. So it's, bear in mind, you've gone through a series of many rooms, and then this is one of the final rooms. And it's, the walls have flags, there's this inverted color flag, and the ceiling and the floor. And so everywhere you look, you're invited to sort of walk through and sort of experience it. And I think, even just looking at the picture, it's a bit overwhelming. But I want it to be that way, and I want you to sort of experience this, I don't know, there's a lot that I could kind of go into sort of the different thinking that I have about this. There's sort of imprisonment, you see the bars, and, then that's something that is what happens when you repeat an idea over and over again. You see this sort of emergence of a pattern. And that's the idea that I'm kind of playing with as well in this series. But, getting down to this, since, I don't have too much time to kind of go into everything, right before you leave, you're instructed to do what you just did, which is like to stare and allow yourself, for 20 seconds, a minute or something, to kind of let that soak into your retina. And the very next room, this is what you do right before you go, is just a completely empty white room. And when you look around, what you will see is this flag in your vision. And you will see other people, assuming they let more than one person into exhibits, but by the time I'm doing this, see other people kind of walking around, and you'll be able to, if they've done the same thing, that they're sort of experiencing something similar as well. And at the same time, that you're in an empty room. And so it really makes you think, first of all, about what people are seeing and what people are experiencing, and to know very consciously that this image that you're seeing is something that's like within you and inside you, and something that has physically sort of happened to your eyes. And you can kind of look at other people around you and think maybe they're seeing the same thing, but they're not, they might not necessarily be. And I was I'm inspired by what's it, Olafur Ellison? I think he's an artist. He did the Weather Project. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, actually.
Okay, he's fantastic. He does these I think he's like Icelandic, and he does these huge sort of natural I don't want to call it like installations moments. The Weather Project is literally like a giant sun, in this huge warehouse. I mean, you should Google it. It's phenomenal. I wish I had a chance to see it. But he does these things that really play on your perception and your reaction to the natural environment around you. And I do remember one of his pieces was a piece where there was a mist sprayed, and you would see a rainbow, and that rainbow is entirely dependent on where you were, the light happening at that day, like what was coming into your eyes. I mean, that's your own rainbow. And I thought that was such a marvelous thing. The art isn't necessarily what's out there, it's what's happening in here, and that you can have your own perception and you can have your own sort of interior experience of something, outside of you, and also share it with other people. And I guess it's sort of that duality of sharing and recognizing the uniqueness of perspective. So I don't know. I'll pause right here because I do want to talk about the flag idea.
Yeah.
So
So I saw the American flag afterwards, right? For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as you said, some people may see something completely different. I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw the American flag at the end, but leading up to it, like what was going through your mind? Just curious, as a kind of a spectator as well in this.
Are you asking me?
Yeah. What was going through your mind, just as you leading up to that moment when the flag disappears?
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think throughout the presentation, the visuals are so strong. I think that's what really struck me the most. Kind of, for example, seeing pictures of, I think it was the, is it indigenous Filipinos in Coney Island? I think that was the most striking to me. That what stood out the most. I mean, I think in general about the presentation, there were a lot of things that kind of stuck out as really exciting to me, particularly what we were talking about before, in that like the smell kind of integration into the project. Like I think there was quickly on the screen, it was the coconut shells, and I think it was copra. It was the scent, I think it mentioned very quickly that it's an unfamiliar scent in the United States. So to me, that kind of is an exciting prospect, because you have this kind of scent that you could be kind of introducing to people who have never kind of smelled drying coconut shells. Is that what it was? Copra, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the shell, for the people who aren't familiar with copra. It's the shell that, the dried shell of coconut you press to get coconut oil out of. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's such an exciting kind of prospect of this project, because, like you said before, it's kind of like it's like a shot to your hippocampus, right? Like when you have smell, it's so closely linked with memory, and I think it's exciting to think of people kind of experiencing this installation and forming new memories almost from it, and having some sort of lasting impression in that way. It could make it super powerful. I think that's exciting to me. With the American flag, I mean, I've seen the illusion before, and I can't, I'm obviously have seen your project. I'm not going to pretend I've seen this, but I mean, I think it's consistent with the message, right? And questions what are the American values? Who is America representing? Who is it a dreamland for? Kind of all of those things, and it's turning, and it's on its head in a way, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I think for me, I guess what I'm struggling with is there's so many ideas in there. Okay. From Brian's perspective, I think this may be the point of art in a way. Everybody experiences it differently, right? Curious as kind of a professional artist, right? What is it that you were trying in that video? Because there's so many things. I was pulled from many different directions. I didn't know what, like, was there a point? Like, the flag at the end got there, great. But then I'm like trying to connect the dots, right? So in your creative process, like, yeah, like walk me through that. Like, were you trying to take someone on a journey to a point, right? And is it okay? Is that the case? So walk me through that, like
red kind of that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great.
I got lost in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, no, that totally is valid, and that makes a lot of sense. I think I was, it's not new to me to cram everything in the kitchen sink into a little hot pocket and say that that's all. Maybe because, it's, as an artist and as a poet, you sort of see a lot of like compounding things within, to see the world in a grain of sand. I think Yeats, I remember.
But maybe that is maybe the point is that I, as a viewer, maybe I need to like watch it multiple times to create and maybe experience it differently each time, right? Now I'm just
Yeah.
making it up right now, but you tell me, is that is that what
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it's just it's a summary of something that needs to be built,
okay.
and that's, it that was, created to sort of give somebody a very, very quick and dirty idea of what this whole thing is about. It's not meant to be experienced in 3 minutes. It's meant to, and yeah, it's kind of, it's a mind bender to kind of get thrown all of that. You think about the brain processing all of these things. We're only using like this much of it, but it's supposed to be, and it's conceived as a walkthrough. So, are you familiar with Sleep No More, which is that sort of interactive Macbeth theater piece? I believe it started off at Oberon in Cambridge, and now it's in New York. And are you familiar with it?
No, no.
You should. I think you totally dig it. So it's basically a multi-level theater that tells a story. The Macbeth, Macbeth, the Shakespeare piece, but instead of sitting in an audience and watching the actors do their thing, you are given a mask, I believe. I can't afford to go there, so I just listen to friends and I look at ideas. But you're given a mask, and you literally walk through the space and you explore the space, and different scenes are happening in front of you. One scene you see, Lady Macbeth with the out damp spot part, or another scene you might see the three witches, or another scene, so it's you being present in an experience for an extended period of time, and each one of those things, and those are just proposed projects, and we could talk about the whole story collection thing later, is supposed to give you a scene and a snapshot of, not a snapshot, it's not a snapshot, it's supposed to place you, very much place you and ground you in an idea, and surround you with something. And again, I and this is kind of the fun part about being an artist, is that, like, it doesn't necessarily have to, be like, A plus B equals C. It's like, A plus B, and then what? Like, what are you experiencing? It's not, and then that's the cool, it's like art, the artist can do whatever. The artist can have an intent and they can create the piece, and it's up to their skill or whatever to craft it in such a way to have a desired outcome. But, once it's released, I mean, it's all you guys. It's all the way that you experience it. It's all the way that you would read it or feel it, or, walk through it. So, does that kind of like get to it, or do you need a more walk through? Because I can walk through.
No. I understand, because I think the question I'm trying to get at, and this is probably the question that a lot of people, especially when I talk to organizations, always ask this. So, how do you measure? You said that your desired outcome, right? Your desired impact, and Brian, you also mentioned it earlier about that impact, right? Well, I guess the first question is, what is your intended, like, what do you hope that will happen to individuals as they go through this installation, right? Uh, and yeah, and how do you? I can imagine there's so many responses. So keep track of that. How do you know that it's having an impact?
that's the $1 million question. Like, how do you know that art is having an impact on something?
Wait, right? In your case,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right? But I'm just curious if you've thought about this or just or think,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
curious your process.
Well, I ultimately I want this to sort of be a gateway to empathy. I
Oh,
think that's very much lacking in our experience today, and sort of this in the world where you kind of get served anything you want, any show you want, any bit of entertainment you want. I mean, I feel like very much affected when I see people not give each other a chance and not give each other a moment to listen to someone else's story and someone else's experience. So, I mean, I think that that's the biggest
so Jenny,
goal.
love,
Yeah.
I love that, right?
Yeah.
There, that's gateway to empathy, providing access to someone else's just experience, right?
hmm hmm
That, right? That is, you need to get that out way at the beginning about what the, okay? What is Dreamland about, right? And of course, people can get there very differently. It's not about prescribing a path there, I think, just
hmm
is just telling them, hey, this is a potential place you could end up here.
hmm
How you get there, this installation will try to provoke different things, right? Provoke different stimuli,
hmm
push you maybe, and see if you
Yes.
might not get there this time, but maybe. And so yeah, so that's for me. I'm always trying to get that, and I wonder for artists whether there is that intent, like this is what I seek, like this is what I'm trying to do,
hmm
and because I think that's almost for what you're trying to do, almost measurable.
I will take your ideas on how to measure this. I am serious because it is like
Um,
we actually probably could, now that I think about it, if you do a follow-up questionnaire,
yeah,
you know.
if they're coming into, they're having this experience, right?
hmm hmm
Engagement in your, because they're actually going to walk in and
Yes.
come out of this. I think you
hmm
can either do engagement of some sort. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. It really depends on what it is that you are trying to evoke.
hmm hmm
Empathy, then, or some another emotion. There must be a way, or at least indirectly, to try to get at that and see.
Yeah, I had thought about it sort of in the abstract, and definitely that was like the goal of it, like this sort of gateway to empathy. But like now you really have me thinking about like an actual like quantitative way to look at this. And I think first of all, I think the first thing to think about if you're going to kind of look at the way that something like this is affecting people who experience it is to not have an assumption that they're going to sort of get something out of it at all. And I think that as an artist, I think you really, that's when you're like have to take your ego and put it in your shoe and be like, go away, because like it could very well be that you were a failure in your attempt, but something else could emerge. I mean, and this is something that we could kind of like bandy about, like what different characteristics, or like what kind of questionnaire could we ask people. I mean, like first of all, like, does it make you think about other people differently? I mean, that's one very simple question. Does it make you
Or just to let them explain, just let them to share their experience, right? To your point,
Mhm.
no assumptions. Have no assumptions. Just let them talk,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then let that tell you what it is they're experiencing. Brian, you want to say something? I feel it.
I mean, I think you're hitting a really strong point, Manuel. Getting like, and I think it's important, yeah, to get that kind of feedback. But I think, this being a vehicle for storytelling, you can have a kind of forum, a breakdown almost afterwards of people's experiences. And they'll be telling you stories when they come out of it, if they, for
Mhm.
people who connect with it. So I think you could get even more out of it. It could be kind of producing more itself, as a vehicle for storytelling, if you kind of harness it correctly.
That's fascinating. I think we're just coming up with something right now. You
Yeah.
can use it itself as a storytelling vehicle. right? They'll come out of it with and have this experience.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So this is one thing that you didn't see in the video. It was in the proposal because I wrote a grant thingy for this. Was I intend this to be a dynamic, evolving piece. So it's not like, you make exhibit A, B, C, D, it leads to E, and that's that. I want it to move, and I want it to change depending on the different stories that are solicited, collected, depending on the patterns that emerge, depending on the location. So, say, for example, it's near the border of Mexico, and we're dealing with kind of the detention of children and immigrants, and like, I feel like I would try to highlight stories that speak directly to that experience, so I guess and that messes up sort of like the scientific, like, kind of asking necessarily what happens if the experience differs every time, but I think as a piece, and it's like Madonna or something, it's like it has to evolve, it has to change, and grow. There should be, and I'm sort of kind of building these things right now, like a way for people to kind of leave their story, like be a voice memo on the Dreamland Project, or, kind of doing a write-up. Like, I want this to be a moving thing, not just this is art and it's meant to be experienced as art. I want it to be a dialogue, and I think that's super, super important to me. And I'm just showing this, like, in terms of dialogue, I'm showing you this piece that you're seeing here right now, like every American flag is a warning sign. And this was a big, I had a number of little moments that sort of inspired me to do this project. And seeing this piece was really one of those light bulb moments, literally. I mean, it's like neon lights, but this is made by Damien Dineyazi at the Honolulu Biennial, I think. And, there are really a lot of artists there that were trying to push against the dominant narrative. And this piece stuck out to me as very much as simple and effective, because, before even I saw this, I was trying to come to terms with the idea of, well, the American flag, and the idea of Americanness and patriotism in a not so great climate. And this articulates it so well, for me, and for other people I know, when they see American flags, I kind of get, there's a cortisol spike right there a little bit, because, like, having been sort of having experienced like racism and harassment, and, being told to kind of go back home to whatever chink country I came from, and stuff like that, by people who, have American flags on their t-shirts and their bumpers on their trucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's very, it's not about, it's a symbol, and the symbol isn't about, democracy and, independence and freedom. It's divisive. It's saying, it's in group, out group. It's saying, like, you don't belong here, but we do. And we do belong here. And that's why I played with this idea of the American flag illusion, because first of all, I could tolerate looking at the inverse, without being too stressed out. And like, second of all, it was, I want it to let people sort of think and reclaim the sort of American dream ethos without sort of the perversion that's been happening, by certain people who have ideas about people not being or belonging. So,
and I think You mentioned optical illusion, right?
Hmm.
Because actually, biologically, there's an optical illusion.
Hmm.
And then you can add another layer on top of that, right? Where you're actually talking about the societal optical illusion.
Yes. Yes.
So you can think about all these connections, right? And that's why for the gallery in particular, and I just bring it back to the new society, these are the
Hmm.
right they're right there, and art is essentially the vehicle that connects these domains, right?
Yes.
And so you can take someone on that journey, and they you can trick them, trick their biology,
Yes. Yes.
and then suddenly it evokes a whole new response, and use
Mm.
that trickery to evoke a new response, and then let them see that pathway. I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to see the other artists, sort of given previews of some. I love it.
You have, yeah, so that's the idea. We continue to evolve, right, in this project, and thinking about this interface, science and society, and there's so much in there. But I think and each of you are approaching it very differently, from the really tiny to the much bigger, and to the optical, domains that uh, at first you might not understand. You need to think. You just
Mhm.
really uh,
Yes. You
like
have to think.
I love it. It's just that vehicle, as you said at the beginning, art is a vehicle. I think
Hmm.
it's a wonderful vehicle, and the question is how we use it, right? And each of us are using it differently. You're using it
Hmm.
differently. Brian is using it very, very differently too with his photography.
Hmm.
We'll probably
Um,
talk more about that, Brian, later
yeah.
on.
Yes. Yeah. We'll hear about.
For Nano Chat, we'll take a dig deep into what imagery,
Mm.
what emotion you want to evoke through your imagery, which I think is really cool. So JennyMae, with your Dreamland project, this is an installation, right? In a way.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
you have a
For
website.
now.
So for now,
Yes.
walk us through. So installation for now, but what else do you imagine having additionally? What would be inside?
Well, first of all, obviously, this did not anticipate this whole coronavirus situation where we would all be at home and conferences and God damn it, the concerts and the artist museums, and my heart is like breaking thinking about it. But you know, I don't know. Part of me, I'm like tearing up. Part of me is like in mourning for that because there's so much connection that's made in these experiences of art when you go to a museum or you listen to music and theater. But again, we have to. And I've seen so many freaking amazing artists like rise to the challenge and adapt to these new kind of situations, and it's like wonderful. And it's cool because it's like one of those things where you squeeze and you take off a lot of pathways, and creativity still finds its way, like finds a way, Jeff Goldblum, and like finds a way to like change into something else. And so I thought of this, and I thought long and hard about like how can we translate this for the time being. Say this is not going to happen for a while, which I've sort of accepted as a reality, but I still think that the idea and the stories can be told. So something that I'm playing with right now is, how do you use this, and you see this screen in front of you as a device that affects the world around you, where you are, sitting in your chair, in your room, in your house. And, it really, when you watch a movie and it changes the tone and the color and the vibration, really the energy of the room that you're in, I think that I think you can, and I'm trying to do this, like to deliberately change the your space. I feel like I'm being intrusive, but your space using color and sound and story. So I have reached out to other writers that I know who have written about their own personal experiences. Recently went to a new moon ceremony with the Babaylan and the Kathara, which is an indigenous Filipino group, and got to hear their stories, and have been sort of thinking about the rhythms of music, of the kinds of color that would express, I guess, a feeling of fear or solidarity, you know, and seeing how that would change the place around you. So say, you know, this whole screen was red and your lights were off, and then the room around you, if you're watching it on a laptop or even on a phone, would sort of be bathed in this redness. And how can you pair that color and light and redness with a story, an auditory told story or music? You know, it's so, and I'm so excited about that.
So,
you know?
make sure I understand. So you have this installation piece that ideally was originally meant to be experienced in you know, the space somewhere where people come and go. So that's for the Dreamland. I'm just thinking about Dreamland. One project inside there. Now you're talking about, since I can't do this right now, I'm about using, you know, this screens that we have in front of us to still give people that same experience. Okay?
Yeah.
Am I so far?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then that's still pointing to the idea. So let's say if you didn't have COVID-19, you know, would Dreamland be just this physical space and creation of this different types of installations? Would that be the goal? Like that would be the projects that you're building, different types of installations. Is that in a way capture that?
Yeah, that was the goal. But now, and this is probably like fighting against, I think now sort of seeing this opportunity to play with that, you know, makes me want to see, you know, where can I draw the line in terms of like use of media for effectiveness, like the multimedia experience in terms of music, and, you know, where being will be. And I want them to sort of interact with one another, you know, so that it can be, so they'll be parts of one another, you know. I'm thinking of, there was one artist, and I wish I could remember her name, but she did the Plastic Project in New York. Have you heard of this project? Super cool. Oh my God, it's amazing. So she built a grocery store and filled it with, it was a commentary on plastic and its sort of foreverness. And so everything in the grocery store looked exactly like a normal grocery store with meat and potato chips and cereal. They're all made out of plastic bags. Oh, it's a plastic bag project or something like that. All made of plastic bags. And so that was like kind of a stationary installation experience that people kind of like walked through. And you could definitely get something just by kind of passively walking through and experience that. But, you know, on certain nights, it would transform from just sort of a passive thing into a theater experience where there was like puppets and it just came alive. So I sort of see the digital media aspect kind of becoming, and this is something I have to figure out. This is part of the process. This is the part of the fitting different parts together. But I see it as becoming part of whatever the physical experience is, so that they would be enhanced with one another, but, you know, could potentially exist as separate entities. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think you're still figuring it out a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, when I'm imagining the Dreamland, I guess I was thinking, okay, you have this activation part. You talk about storytelling, so you can imagine then in that Dreamland space, there's one part where they're experiencing this, and the other creative part where people can create stories. So you can imagine a box space they can build, and people are creating stories, right? Actual storytelling, story creator, thinking the StoryCorps, for example, model,
Yes, yes,
be an avenue, and that could be online, for example, right?
yes, exactly.
You can imagine Dreamland being this space, a tank, if you will, an incubator,
Mm, yes,
incubating these new types of ideas, and the installation is just one thing that you've created, type
yes,
thing. But then you have these other things that you're on the pipeline, if you will, and I would think, and I would maybe, and this is, let me know if I'm sort of thinking about it the wrong way, whether you have to be the only person creating in the Dreamland space.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
suspect it's not, but maybe you can say,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, I missed what you just said. Like, what did you say?
So do you envision you being the only creator in this space, in the Dreamland?
I mean, I can't be. Like, I think it's impossible to be the only creator in this space, which is what's so exciting about it, because I do see this as becoming kind of a collaborative thing, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's, I have my story and that's all I got. I got, like I can't be your story or Brian's story or anybody else's story, and it wouldn't be a story, and it wouldn't be. That's why I call it the Dreamland Project. I want it to be this sort of quilt of many things, and there's so many amazingly talented artists and writers and poets and songmakers that you can bring together for different pieces. So I guess, like the short of it is it would definitely be a collaborative project. And that's what I'm, I want to see this grow very much so. And again, it's in little kind of embryonic frog fertilized egg phase. But like, like the as it grows and we'll see things emerge. And I want to give it room to allow for these developments to emerge, to allow for partnerships to kind of blossom, like whatever, between a painter and a songwriter or a dancer. I can't freaking dance, but like, like how could maybe something will appear, or maybe we'll see sort of a repeated experience, kind of crop up in different stories from different perspectives, and how can we bring that together?
Yeah,
So this is, yeah, go ahead.
no, I think you're walking towards something, as you put.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's you iterate, you will continue to iterate. I'm as you were talking, I was thinking about a model of like a theater, right? It
Mm.
does different shows every so often, right? So you can imagine maybe you focus on the installation and just have many different types of installations, right?
Mm-hmm.
A storytelling one, another one. So, but you're anchored somewhere. So you don't want to. You don't, of course, you don't want to do everything.
I haven't heard that one.
You can go back to your slide with all your contact info, because as we're coming close to the end, I want people to be able, if they want to go to your,
Yeah.
I want to contact
Where am I?
and
Oh, sorry.
get to, I want to make sure people can contact you, because that's the key thing what we're trying to do with this.
Yes.
So definitely, I think what I always tell people is keep talking about the project to other people.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see different aspects of it and say, okay, have you tried this? Don't be afraid to experiment. Experimentation is really, really, and I think you're doing that already, but in the sense of the project itself, the Dreamland project,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and trying to do different things, especially with COVID-19 now.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Here, I think you're experimenting this idea of how do we maybe even take that experience into people's homes, literally, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really, really fascinating. So tell people, how can they get in touch with you beyond, I think you've said Twitter, Instagram, but
Yes.
yeah, are you engaging people right now? Can they just email you? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Email me. I'm just sort of getting this off the ground. I just put the website together. You can go to thedreamlandproject.org, or and there's a little message contact form, Twitter, Instagram, at dreamland_now, and you can always find me. And I'm more active on my Instagram and Facebook at JennyMae Kho. JennyMae Kho. And, anyone who sees this can shoot me a message. Find me, send me a private message. My website is also pretty simple, JennyMaeKho.com. So, again, that's another way to get in touch. But if anyone sees this and has a beautiful, beautiful spark of inspiration or wants to talk some more about it, I would love to hear from them. So
I think that's the key thing. Definitely.
yeah.
And I should have asked this earlier, but is this now? It's still early, but are you a nonprofit? Are you trying to be a nonprofit, or is it going to be a different dimension? Or you don't know yet? That's also fine too.
I would like to explore that.
Social enterprise, for example.
Yes, yeah. I think I like the idea of social enterprise, but I haven't dug deep enough into what it could potentially be. I've sort of started poking around at the whole 501c3 process to see what it's about, and I'm sure you could probably give me a couple pointers.
Talk offline about that for sure.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. But
But we didn't talk about funding so much today, and I think we can leave that for another time. But
mhm.
only with art and funding, those are two almost like oil and water sometimes when you think about these things. But you have to think about them, right? And I know you
Absolutely.
that whether it's through grants or how do you sustain this? How do you make sure it continues to grow over time, right? And it's financially stable, of course. Those are very hard questions, and
Yes.
the key thing for now is figuring out that right sauce to get things moving.
Mhm. Mhm.
Guys, this has been fantastic. I've enjoyed talking to both of you. JennyMae, I really appreciate you just taking us on a journey. Really, you are at the beginning of this, and usually I don't give too many people right at the beginning,
Little babes.
and so I look forward to seeing how this grows, and we hope we'll have you back.
Yes.
So, in fact, people who are watching this in the future dates, this is actually happening a couple of days before another exhibit called Invisible Connections that we're going to be showcasing online as well. And so we will be recording that too. So you should just go back to our website, usocietyart.org, and you can watch JennyMae talk about her work there too. So double, look at that.
Yeah. Actually, I have another quick pitch if someone sees this in the relatively near future. I'll be doing also a Q&A panel with Creatives of Color Boston. They're doing something called Boondock Mountain. You can probably find that on my Facebook page and Instagram as well. And it's on intergenerational healing, which is a really wonderful thing. And I didn't get a chance to talk about this here, but I want to talk about kind of the colonialist, post-colonial kind of, or reactions to it and evolving from it. So if anyone, it's Boondock Mountain and Creatives of Color Boston. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
You join us next time on our next Nano Chat.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, JennyMae.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. I really, really, really enjoyed it. So I hope to see you again, and I'll see you in a few days. So